The beginning of the Sefer, we were talking about that a person is put in this world to complete himself, to get shleimus, spiritual perfection. And the Ramchal asked, how can we achieve shleimus if we are lacking, right? We're created lacking, so how is it possible that we can become shalom? So the Ramchal said, in order to do that, he's going to have to introduce a lot of concepts. Can everyone hear? Am I loud enough? Okay.
Hear you louder.
Louder? I'm going to try to talk even louder. Okay. So he says we're entering into a vast sea of ideas, and the way that you get knowledge is by building one idea on top of the other. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to learn one topic, and then another topic, one after the other. That's how any complex topic you learn, you could do it if you just take it step by step. So that's what we're going to do. So Amar HaSeichel, Lamed Beis in the Simonim. Rishon Atzar Sheteda, first you have to know, She'afal Pisha Maru Klar, Sheratza Odom Baruch Ulate Hasaga Mikar Shleimuso El Nivrav, Vadehu Shlo Haya Haratzon Bezeh Laseis Lahem Hasaga Mikol Shleimuso, Asher Ein Lo Sof, Shir V'Tachlis Klal. He says, even though that God wanted us to understand a certain comprehension, that we should have a certain understanding of His perfection, he says it's impossible for us to totally understand His perfection. So we're going to learn there are certain aspects of God's perfection that we can understand, but there's other aspects that we cannot understand. On the contrary, in fact, it's only a tiny bit of Hashem's perfection that we're going to be able to understand. The vast majority of Hashem's perfection, which we'll describe in detail soon, we're not going to ever be able to understand. And he says, in that little bit of Hashem's perfection that we will be able to understand, that's where we're going to get our oneg and our enjoyment. We learned that the reward that we get, that we earn ourselves in this world, is a spiritual pleasure of being close to Hashem, and that is an understanding of certain aspects of Hashem's shleimus, of Hashem's perfection. And he says that perfection, where we will get that enjoyment, is a very, very tiny part of all of Hashem's perfection, because we're not going to be able to understand the rest of Hashem's perfection. He continues, this is obvious, for the reason, says it's impossible for a creation like us to understand all aspects of God's perfection. It's impossible. We were created by God, and it is not possible for us to understand Him in many, many, many areas. Okay, as it says, can someone really investigate God and to understand the essence of the Almighty? And that which we can understand about Hashem is only a drop in the ocean. It's only a drop in the ocean, and it sounds like it's that drop in the ocean that la'asad lavo, we're going in the world to come, we are going to get our reward and our spiritual pleasure by understanding that drop in the ocean. But the rest of the ocean we'll never be able to understand. So, can't even try. Amar Hanashama, says the soul. Remember, the soul is the one who's asking the questions, and the seichel, the intellect, is the one who is teaching him. Zeh Pashat Etzel Kol Chachmei Lev says this is obvious. Ukfar Nemar, it says, Mi Yimal Gvuras Hashem, who can express Hashem's awesomeness? Meaning Hashem is totally beyond our comprehension. Amar Seichel, says the intellect, Asa Keshenashav Alibeinu Kol Sirtei Ma'asav Yisbarach. Now when we put Hashem's actions upon our heart, we see what Hashem did from the time that He put man on earth, and everything that He said He's going to do to our holy prophets, that He told our holy prophets that He's going to do for us. Every event in human history is going to reveal a certain aspect of Hashem's perfection, which is His oneness. But everything else, we're not able to understand. He's saying that the one aspect of Hashem's perfection that we can understand is His oneness, is Yichud Hashem, His oneness. Now, when we say God is one, now that's what a big chunk of this book is going to discuss. What does it mean when we say that God is one? It doesn't mean simply that He's one, like there's one bottle on the table. It means much more than that, which is something that we're going to discuss at great length. But he says the oneness of Hashem is something that we can understand. Everything else, His perfection in other areas, impossible for us to understand. Impossible for us as creations to understand that. We just don't have the ability to understand them. Derech Mashal, for example, what are things that we cannot understand? Yadanu Shehu Chacham. We know that Hashem is wise. We know that. Avalo Hisagnu Sofach Masal. But we will never be able to understand the depth of Hashem's wisdom. We can't understand what it means to say that Hashem is wise. We'll never understand that completely or at all. Right? We say Hashem is the wisest of all beings. To truly comprehend what that means, impossible for a human being to understand. Yadanu Shehu Yadeh. We know that Hashem knows everything. V'lo Hisagnu Yediyasa. But we can't understand what it means that He knows everything. Impossible. Val Kain Amruzal. The rabbi said, Antu Chacham V'lo B'Chachma Yediyah. Antu Maven V'lo B'Vina Yediyah. You are wise, but we don't know your wisdom. You understand, and we don't know your understanding. That's very important. Since we don't have the ability to understand these these attributes of Hashem, it becomes forbidden for us to investigate it. Once we know that it's something for us that it's impossible to understand, there is a prohibition to learn about it. Because it says on all these things, something which is beyond you, do not investigate. Something which is hidden from you, don't look into. V'chein Amru also says, Imras libcha shuv l'makom. If your heart runs, if your mind runs, go back to the place. So we know that in Judaism we're encouraged to ask questions and to investigate everything and to understand. But there's certain things that we have to accept. As human beings, it is totally impossible for our minds to comprehend certain things. And on those things where it's impossible for our minds to comprehend that, it is actually forbidden to look into. It would only cause damage. Right? I've used this mashal many times. It's like if you want to explain the difference between red and blue, a person to a blind person, right? You can't do it, right? A person who never saw color in his life. You can explain what red looks like. Well, red looks like blood. Well, the person never saw blood in his life, so how can you explain the difference between red and blue? It's impossible. There are certain things that a human being, God created us, it is impossible for us to understand, and therefore it's forbidden for us to look into it. Now this comes with the fact that anytime we look into something, anytime we research or learn a new wisdom, especially when it comes to Torah, there's a certain humility that we have to have. We have to understand that these are, even what we can understand, these concepts are very lofty concepts and are beyond us, and just because we can't understand it at first glance doesn't mean there's something wrong with the wisdom. That means there's something wrong with us and that we have to work hard to understand it. But it's a very important thing, because when a person is arrogant in learning anything, but especially Torah, then he comes to make mistakes and can come to false doctrines and preach false things. But that's how that has to do with an attitude we have when we learn. It says Sadikim Yelchubam Amuposhim Yikashlubam, that a righteous person, a righteous person will look at something and an evil person will look at something. The righteous person will cause him to live a good life and to be straight, whereas a wicked person, the same thing that the righteous person looked at will cause him pitfalls and cause him to sin more and make more mistakes. So what is our reaction when we get to something, anytime we're learning and we don't understand something? Do we say, this is a good question, I'm going to go ask my rabbi or ask somebody who knows more than me, or I'll try to investigate it? Do we do that, or do we say, no, the Torah must be wrong because I don't understand it, chas v'shalom? And then they obviously leads to destruction. But we have to have the first approach. So when it comes to these things about understanding the shleimus of Hashem and what it means that God is perfect in His wisdom and His knowledge, we will never be able to understand that completely. So therefore, it's forbidden actually to look into it. Okay, let's go a little further. But when it comes to Hashem's oneness, Adarab, on the contrary, this is totally clear to us. It is clear, and it will be more clear. He's going to explain. So when it comes to knowing God's wisdom, how He's perfect in His wisdom, that is forbidden for us to look into. We can't understand. But when it comes to His yichud, knowing that Hashem is one, that's actually a mitzvah for us to know, and we have to know it. It's not enough that it's only clear to us. It's not only do we have to know it, that Hashem is one, but we have to put it on our hearts. To fix it in our hearts, and to have no doubt about it, to just be totally certain in it. It's what Moshe commanded, Mipi Agvur from Hashem, V'yadata hayom shevosa al lavavecha, you should know, today you should know and you should put it on your heart, Ki Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem is God, B'shamayim v'mal v'aretz mitachas, in heaven and on earth, there's nothing else besides Hashem. Now, we're going to learn in detail what it means that Hashem is one, but it means more than He is just, again, one as a number. What it means is, and what the Ramchal is going to go through, is that throughout human history, it appears, Chas v'shalom, that there are more powers in the world before God, besides God, right? How else could evil people shoot rockets from Gaza and murder innocent Israelis, right? How could God allow that? If God was totally in control, how could He allow evil to exist? So it appears that there is another force besides God in the world. Well, obviously we know that's not true, and God allows evil to exist. We're going to learn in Daas Tevunos why Hashem allows evil to exist. But the fact that evil exists and that it gives the appearance that God is not one, that's a chisaron in Yichud Hashem. And we're going to learn that all of human history is to get to the point where we recognize, the entire world recognizes that Hashem is one and there's no other power besides Hashem. So Yichud Hashem doesn't just mean He's one, it means that He is the only real power, and anything that appears to go to contradict Hashem, Chas v'shalom, is only because He allows them to do that. But when Mashiach comes and the end of world history, we're going to realize that Hashem is really the only power, and this concept is going to be discussed at great length in Daas Tevunos here. So again, just to summarize, we're learning piece by piece on the ladder of wisdom, and while we can't understand what it means Hashem is perfect in any attribute that He has, His wisdom, what He knows, His strength, things like that, the one thing that we can understand how He's perfect, and that we actually are required to understand, is His yichud, is the fact that He is one. And next week, we will continue. Thank you for coming and bearing with us during this unique class.